really, really hard, and they execute the system, and that's what it's all about.
Yes, sir.
Trust.
He's pretty big trust. Big trust, baby.
Hey, yes, sir.
Right on cue. Hey, right on cue. Hey, let me.
We're back on the Jumbo Set podcast, presented as always by Jimmy's Famous Seafood. My name is Jake Louque, and I'm joined by the man himself from Locked On Ravens. It is Kevin Oestreicher. Kevin, how are we doing on this lovely early Wednesday evening?
It's interesting time to be covering this Ravens team right now. You know, you got the titanic battle here of the Ravens and Chiefs for the right to go to 500, which is, of course, what everybody was expecting heading into the season.
Yeah, 1-2. Who would have thought? I mean, kind of, it's funny, like looking at the early schedule, like these first 4 games, I probably, it was in the back of my mind that it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that the Ravens might be in the spot. Chiefs being here is definitely a little more surprising, but yeah, man, it kind of feels like the battle of 2 alleged heavyweights that have been completely battered. It feels like the fight is starting in like the 11th round as opposed to just with a clean bill of health for both squads. So it's going to be interesting, and it is coming off the heels of, as I wrote in the description here, one of the more demoralizing losses probably in Ravens recent history. I'm sure you've maybe had that same experience. It's funny, like talking to kind of other content creators in the space and just sort of the conversation. We share a lot of the same listeners and stuff. I'm sure you're kind of going through it a little bit the same that we have been.
Yeah, you know, it's been tough to start the year for them. And honestly, I think it's crazy that, you know, Ryan Clark almost said it best. We're like, look, this is right now a 1-2 team that's only beaten the Browns. Like, that is the facts behind where they are right now. You're not going to be seeing the Browns in the playoffs, right? You're just not. It's going to be teams like
that same Browns team that just beat the Packers.
You know, yeah, you know, maybe Joe has one more run in him. Maybe January Joe makes one last final appearance with that defense. But yeah, I mean, it is still early in the season. Like, I do try to keep that in perspective. Where in my personal rule, and I say this all the time, is like, I genuinely give it a month before, you know, kind of classifying something as a trend. So we still have 1 more week to go. So I'm going to give it 1 more week. And then it's like, okay, if you have 4 straight weeks of no pass rush, if you have 4 straight weeks of, you know, Raja Rosengarten not playing particularly well, or, you know, some of these big time moments where they can't step up and that like same type of loss happens again and they're 1-3. I mean, yeah, that's concerning. I think the most disappointing part to me is the fact that essentially we're right back where we were last year. When you talk about just where the Ravens are, it's a different path to get there. You know, they started 0-2 last season. They pick up the win against Dallas in week 3. They're 1-2, and essentially what's a must-win game for them against the Bills, which they do pick up the win and kind of get it going from there. This time around, it's, hey, you lose in week 1, you get a win in week 2, but then you lose in week 3 and you're 1-2 with essentially what's a must-win game against the Chiefs in week 4. So, you know, it's difficult to kind of pinpoint where they are right now. I know John Harbaugh talked about that on Wednesday, is like this, you know, still early, is trying to figure ourselves out as a team, which, you know, is fair. But, you know, when you're a contender and every win or loss can sink you in the standings, the 1 or 2 seeds, or it can impact your division chances. I have no doubt in my mind the Ravens will win this division. I have no doubt in my mind they'll make the playoffs. Like, I think they're just that talented. It just comes down to, like, is it because the AFC North is so weak this season that they do that, or are they going to show that they're a contender like we thought they were going to be? I think the roster's too talented. It's been a little bit of a shock, some of their issues so far, for sure.
Yeah, and with the schedule being so strong too, I mean, not to, you know, I don't want to like bellyache about it too much, but you do look at the Bills and the Ravens. The Ravens were a couple of freak plays away from probably winning that game going away. And then the Bills since then, they've faced the Dolphins, and who did they have this past week? Was it the Jets?
Yeah, it was Jets week 2, Dolphins week 3, yeah. And then
and they've got the Saints coming
Saints Patriots coming up for them. So
yeah, so those were 2 teams that played each other very tight. I'm not saying the Bills didn't deserve to win there, but it's just like man, you look at the differences in strength of schedule. I don't even think Bills fans would argue that it's not particularly close. And so, like, I'm kind of at it where it's like, man, if the Ravens do lose this one against the Chiefs, and they're sitting at 1-3, like that's going to be tough, but the schedule does start to open up at a certain point. But it is unequivocal that the Ravens, I think, have kind of failed the test thus far this season. If you weren't going to get it done against the Bills in that spot where you really had them on the mat, okay, but you got to get it done against a strong team in the Lions, who some people were down on, but it's like they still have a lot of talent there, and they still have Dan Campbell, and it's looking like they're going to be just fine. But man, that's your margin for error is very much slimmed down when you don't pass that early test against the Bills. And obviously they go out and they thump the Browns, which again, maybe that's looking like a better win right now. Who knows? Yeah. But it just kind of leaves you in a tough spot.
Yeah. And again, I think the thing that frustrates most people is like, you're 100% correct. I just think that for me and a lot of other people, it's like, well, those couple of big plays and those big moments, that's usually what a playoff game comes down to. And so this is not the playoffs. They're not getting eliminated when they lose these games or anything like that. And honestly, when you want to talk about some of these games, the Detroit game was the one that they could afford to lose. When you talk about a stretch against the Chiefs and the Texans coming up, you don't want that AFC record to sink, right? If you lose to the Chiefs, that impacts your AFC record and divisional stuff along those lines too. I mean, that all comes into play in December and January. But, you know, like Derrick Henry, for example, with the 2 big fumbles in big moments in the Bills and the Lions game, he has 3 fumbles through 3 games, and that's his total from last year in all the games he played. So that's an issue right now. We know the pass rush is a big topic of conversation. We're going to get to, I'm sure, the injuries right now on that front, you know, the issues at points with offensive line consistency, obviously the sacks Lamar Jackson has been taking, whether that is Lamar holding the ball for too long or the offensive line. It's probably a combination of both. But when you kind of look at the stats after that Lions game and you see the number 30 next to pressures and 20 next to missed tackles, you're just like, man, we back in 2021 or something? Like this is crazy. So it's coming into the year. We heard everybody talk about it in that organization. Now they were ready to step up to the plate. They wanted to start fast. You know, they're tired of finishing where they want to finish. And that's all the right messaging, right? But I know we've talked about it, Jake. I'm tired of the revenge tours. They don't need to add any more fuel to the fire. They have plenty of it. Like at this point, it's just go out there, do your job. And I'm not expecting perfection. That's unfair to any team. The Ravens are going to lose games. They're going to have tough moments. Guys aren't going to be perfect. I'm not asking for that. But I just think when you're talked about as having one of the best, if not the best rosters in the league, when you're talked about as like, you know, this is a super team essentially and all these narratives and whatnot, when you start 1-2, those are going to pop up again, but they have played 2 really good teams. And, you know, we knew coming into this thing that 5 of their first 6 games were against division winners from last season. That hasn't changed. So, you know, it's just a matter of stepping up to the plate because you're probably going to see a couple of these teams again in January if you make it there.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole conversation is like these are the measuring stick games, right? We've seen them do it. We like you to your point, we saw them start 0-2 and get to 1-2 last year and claw their way out and beat up on some weaker competition throughout the season. I think maybe part of that had to do with the purported defensive turnover or turnaround, I should say, that we saw from Zach Orr's unit. But then you go into a Buffalo, right? And what happens? You don't turn the ball over at all on defense, and you give up 28 points, and they're kind of able to move the ball on you with ease a little bit. And one thing that I said going into the season, and particularly going to that game, like against an offense like that, and we might see that a little bit this weekend as well against the Chiefs, who I know have been down on offense, but they'll get Xavier Worthy back. We'll see what happens. Against an offense like that, like especially in the way the modern NFL is set up, the teams are going to move the ball on you. And that's kind of why I wanted them to do what Buffalo's defense always seems to be able to do. And what Detroit was able to do against Derrick Henry in the 4th quarter is make splash plays, turn the ball over, even if you can't get sacks, which, listen, that's another huge issue for this team. Even when they're fully healthy, I think has been an issue for them.
Yeah.
Turn the ball over. Like the ball is the entire point of the game. Like punch it out, pick passes off, do what you have to do. We saw it against the Browns, have not seen it against the higher competition, which I think is really remains a concern. Like I don't know how you drill that into your players. I don't know exactly how you scheme up the ability to get turnovers. I think of disguising coverages. I think of stunts. I think of just any way that you can kind of fool these guys a little bit who are otherwise kind of unflappable. That would be what I would point to. But as of right now, they're really not doing any of that. And they're getting taken to the mat for it. I think rightfully so.
Yeah, we can play a game here. And I'm actually I wanted to look this up before because you mentioned the turnovers and then some of these big games and kind of how it's been going. The last time that the Ravens forced a turnover that was against the team that is not the Cleveland Browns, do you know when that was? Do you have any guesses?
Was it the Steelers at the end of the regular season?
It was I believe, Texans on Christmas. Or actually, no. Yeah, it was the Texans on Christmas. They had the one turnover on
An interception.
It was Kyle Hamilton's interception against CJ Stroud.
I left my parents' house that Christmas night, drove back at halftime, and literally turned on the television as the ball was flying into Hamilton's hands. So a great Christmas present for me.
Yeah.
It seems like I've been getting coal ever since then, though.
Yeah. And the issue, too, is like they've had opportunities. Like, that Malachi Starks ball that bounced right off of his hands in that Bills game in week 1. Like, they have had moments in these games to come up with those turnovers. And whether it hasn't bounced their way or it's bounced off of them, it's just, you do need to. And that was another big point of emphasis that the team talked about all offseason is we want to generate more turnovers like that. That's exactly correct. So it's been a huge thing. And if you want to talk about it from a playoff perspective and just how important those are in the postseason, I mean, in the losses in Lamar Jackson's career in the postseason, the Ravens have turned the ball over 15 times and forced just 2 turnovers. So that's a negative 13 turnover differential. It's a stat that I use all the time because it just puts into perspective. It doesn't even have to be just the postseason, but when you win that turnover battle, you give the offense the ball back. And we saw multiple times in this Lions game that, Lions just going down the field, 98 yards, 96 yards. The best way to stop a potent offense is to keep them off of the field and turn them over, convert, or for like defensively, don't let them convert on third down. And turnovers are such a big momentum swing and shift. I mean, and even that blocked punt against Cleveland in week 2 technically wasn't a turnover, but it was a huge play in a game that teams were struggling back and forth. Were the Ravens going to take it? Were the Browns going to take it? And Jay Kummel comes through and makes a play. And so those types of plays can be huge huge boost to you when you turn the ball over. And so that's something they definitely need to work on.
Yeah, they said they count those among defensive turnovers when you make a big special teams play, which absolutely is correct. Like you flip the field on a punt return or a kick return, or you return one for a touchdown, or like Jake Hummel was talking about, block that kick. I mean, it's, that's just another facet of the game. And I think they've looked a little bit better this season compared to last, but that's another John Harbaugh bread and butter thing that you'd hope would be buttoned up. So yeah, I mean, it's all 3 phases, and they're going to need all 3 phases to dig themselves out of this hole that they're in. But I've been kind of wondering since watching that game, and I've seen some people, I think at Il Malik on Twitter and some other people talking about the Ravens maybe having a bit of an identity crisis. Like it seems like they still kind of want to have this style of play where it's like we're nasty and mean and rough, and we're going to stop the run and we're going to run the ball hard on offense. It seems like right now, I don't know if they're really fully built for that. This offensive line, it took them some time last year, so I'll continue to give them time, but they're just not getting consistent plowing efforts in the running game, especially not in the way that we saw Detroit being able to do. And it felt like the Ravens kind of got punked and kind of got upstaged and had their identity stolen in that respect. Not like a Dwight Schrute identity stolen situation, but very, very much different to that. And then on defense, they're not as strong up the spine as I think they would want to be, especially with Matabike out. That's to be fair, but Roquan Smith maybe a step slow, not looking quite like the player that he once was just as recently as a year or 2 ago. You've got very good safety play, I would think, in Hamilton and Starks. Theoretically, you're built up strong at cornerback. I know Alexander has been out, but they're kind of a little bit lighter on defense, especially with the injuries. And then on offense, they were not able to run the ball all that effectively against Cleveland. What did they do? They went to that quick passing game, and then they opened things up deep. Kind of makes me wonder, are they, as I saw on Twitter, kind of more just that run and gun offensive team that is going to have to turn to quick passing and maybe a couple runs from Lamar Jackson, who said against the Lions that it just didn't open up because they were covering well, which I think makes sense. And then on defense, are you going to have to shift your philosophy to just try to take the ball away through the air or try to punch it out here and there? Feels like it's just kind of diametrically opposed with what they're trying to do and what they're built to do. I don't know. It's weird. And I think that's partially a talent and execution thing and also partially a coaching thing. And it makes me wonder how much more leash Zach Orr is going to get here. It's turning into, it's already a conversation amongst the end of the bar crowd who we love and everything. But at this point, it's starting to draw national attention too. And I feel for Zach Orr. I like him as a guy, but man, are we in a position here where you got Uncle Chaz Pagano in the house already? Other people that maybe would know what to do with this talent a little bit better. I'm not sure, man. I'm not calling for his job, but just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and it brings up another conversation about like how many shields does John Harbaugh get in these situations? And look, they're not going to fire Harbaugh during this season. I would be shocked if they made a move on that like while the season is going on. Obviously, the offseason is a different conversation depending on how the year ends. But at this point, like Harbaugh made it very clear, he's like, we got very defensive and like, no, this isn't a Super Bowl or bust year. Like, and I'm obviously paraphrasing, but that was what he essentially was saying. And everyone's like, what? This is what it is. And when you just talk about, and health is obviously a factor and a lot of other factors come in, but rosters like the Ravens have are very rare. And we're going to see that it's very rare this upcoming offseason where they have a laundry list of guys again that are going to be up for free agency and they're not going to be able to keep. Like having a tight end room when fully healthy of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, 2 top 10 tight ends, 100%. And like, that's rare. You have a secondary with Jair Alexander. Obviously, we know why he was released by the Packers. We know why he got the deal he did from the Ravens. But when he's healthy and feeling like Jair Alexander, he's still a really, really great corner in this league alongside of Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins. Like we can go up and down the roster. Stuff like that does not come around often. And so it does beg the question of what changes need to be made if it continues down this path. And I give it a month. So this next week for me is a big barometer. And like, okay, do they need to make a change or two, or can they kind of roll along? And we saw back in 2019, when they started 2-0 and then they gave up like 1,000 total yards on defense in the next 2 weeks, Eric DeCosta was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And he cut Tim Williams. He brought in LJ Fort and Josh Bynes the next week. He traded for Marcus Peters a couple weeks after that. Eric DeCosta is not shy to say, this isn't working. I don't care. It's only been a couple weeks. You're out of here and you're done. And that's a philosophy shift from what we saw from Isaac Newsom. And again, there's not a right or wrong here. Both guys are great at what they do and they're great at what they did. But I think that for me, you could maybe see a trade being made on the D line. And especially, obviously, as we'll get to with Matabike and what that situation could look like and his long-term availability. They probably need to go out and get a guy if Matabike is done for the season, because we saw firsthand, like you said, Jake, in that Detroit game where the run game started a little slow. I think at halftime, Jahmyr Gibbs had like 11 carries for 19 yards. And then the run game just completely opened up there. We saw multiple plays where Roquan Smith was kind of washed out of plays. And even Hamilton on that long David Montgomery run was kind of washed out by Khalif Raymond, which is a very weird guy to get washed out by, but I guess it happened. And then on the offensive line, it's like, there was that perfect textbook play on that Henry touchdown where Rosengarten's like taking 2 guys with his arms. And like there's great blocking up front, and Andrews gets to the second level and he springs them. But then we didn't really see a lot of that for the majority of the rest of the game. And then we've seen Lamar Jackson get happy feet in the pocket. Like this is the first time in a while that it feels like he doesn't fully trust the guys who are protecting him. And as a quarterback, I mean, we see that in Houston right now with CJ Stroud. And you never want to see a quarterback not trust the guys who are blocking for him, because then you get antsy. You're not cool and calm and collected in the pocket. And Lamar is one of the coolest, calmest guys back there. But it's just a difficult situation. Yeah, the injury report right here. Entire starting D line is out here on Wednesday. So I was joking when we were joking before the show, Jake. You and I are about to be out there on Sunday with that D line, because it's looking pretty bleak right there if this is how it stays.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good for anybody. I think my other ACL would be toast.
Yeah.
Lost to history at that point if I were to have to go out there. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. We've kind of been hinting at it, but just pulling it up here. We've got one limited participant. That was tight end Isaiah Likely. I had heard like rumblings that he was going to be back as early as last week. So for him to still be limited on Wednesday, hopefully he's back to full participation tomorrow. But we'll see with him. And then a bunch of did not practice, starting with Travis Jones, who appeared to have been injured in that Detroit game. He only played 2 snaps in the fourth quarter, I think I saw was the number. Patrick Ricard with the calf, still not practicing. That's not good. Ronnie Stanley with an ankle, not practicing today. That's new. Kyle Van Noy still not practicing with the hamstring. And Broderick Washington, another new one, ankle, did not practice. And then, of course, the big one is Nnamdi Madubuike, still with the neck, did not practice today. So it's all pretty big. I think Matabike, that's the one that everyone's kind of wondering about. Harbaugh had some comments just recently, an hour or two ago, saying that he's, quote, concerned about it, and he's not in position to comment or something to that effect. So sounds pretty concerning, and it sounds like that's a pretty long-term one, if not a full season one. Yeah. We're going to see what happens. But, I mean, man, Jones out behind him, Washington out behind him, and they made a couple of corresponding moves today, adding defensive tackles, Josh Tupou, who they've had in-house before, to the practice squad, and Taven Bryan, who was, I think, like a 3rd overall pick, maybe 6th, something like that with the Jaguars several years ago. But it was in the Lamar Jackson draft, because I remember very vividly Jaguars fans, when Lamar would like have some amazing game, they tweet like, "Oh, but did you see Taven Bryan's one for loss or something?" So yeah, they make those couple of corresponding moves. With the Taven Bryan former 1st-round pick thing, I had a nice little shout out to my guy Gary Treeman on Twitter, who says whenever anybody is described as a, quote, former 1st-round pick, he's turbo dog shit. So I hope that's not the case with our guy Taven Bryan here. I'm rooting for him, but man, this just seems like the first in a series of a couple of moves, and hopefully more of them, because they're going to need to beat this lineup quickly if the Matabike situation is serious as it sounds, and if Jones and Washington are not able to get back in the lineup soon.
Yeah, can we put some respect on former 1st-round pick Raven legend Laquan Treadwell? I mean, we can go through the list a little bit, and
I had a couple catches here. Am I misremembering?
Yeah, one or two, like, and they were definitely using him in the agenda of like pushing Ravens 1st-round receivers. Like, oh, they have Laquan Treadwell on the roster too, with Lizzie and Rashad. So that was a fun time. But yeah, it's. The update is bleak. I mean, again, we don't know. There's been no official, like, he's going to miss X amount of time or miss the season. But you're right. When you hear Harbaugh say, yeah, I haven't gotten the green light to comment on it yet, we have heard nothing about how serious or not serious it is. And he's already ruled out for week 4. I mean, at that point, in my opinion, you're probably looking at least an IR, if not, like you said, maybe a full season thing. And at that point, with like neck injuries are scary. I mean, Zach Orr went through this himself. Like, he had to medically retire, and they found something else when he suffered his injury, and that was it for him. And like, I'm hoping, just from a human level and perspective, that Matabike is okay, because obviously, like, yeah, the Ravens need him on the field, and he's a big part of their defense. But like, neck injuries are nothing to mess around with. Like, that's a very scary thing. So I just hope he's okay. And like, yeah, ideally he's back on the field for them this season. But if he's not, Travis Jones for this particular game, Washington as well, like, I put out their defensive line that is currently healthy and not on the injury report. It's Aeneas Peebles, John Jenkins, and 4 guys on the practice squad: CJ Okoye, Brent Urban, and then he mentioned Taven Bryan and Josh Tupou. So I'm going to start to push the, hey, Michael Pierce, you want to come on out?
Looked pretty thick to me.
Yeah. Someone said pick up a helmet and go out there and play it on Monday. And then, I don't care. You know what? I truly don't care that Arizona right now is, what are they, 2-1? Are they 2-1? Yeah. They lost last week, right?
My guy Jonathan Gannon. Yeah, yeah, they did. Man, what a funny team.
Bring Calais Campbell back. Just bring him truly home, even though he played in Arizona for like a long time. But bring him home. Calais Campbell, Michael Pierce. Those are the guys. I know, look, everybody's asking about Christian Wilkins, or trading for maybe a higher up guy like a Jeffrey Simmons or one of those guys. And I don't know what that dynamic would be with Simmons because of the whole Marshall Yonda spit in his face thing. So they need someone, because if Matabike is going to be out long term, and we kind of got a glimpse of what that life looks like. And then look, like, the Chiefs on the ground, and they've said that, like, oh, we're pretty shocked with how bad we've been on the ground. And like the general box score, like, yards per attempt doesn't look terrible. I mean, it's 4.6 yards per carry for them, which is like kind of middling. But like, Pacheco really hasn't been able to find any room on the ground. He's only averaging 3.7. It's, guys like Kareem Hunt, who's averaging like 3.5. Their run game is really not being good at all, like we talked about. So if you have no Jones, who, by the way, with Matabike out, like, he's the one that's getting those double teams.
Yeah.
Like, with Matabike and Jones potentially not in there, that's a long day. And with Worthy full participant, he'll probably play in this game as well. Always got to be on the lookout for a Marquise Brown revenge game, I guess. Maybe. I don't know how that's going to work. Maybe he'll drop a couple to help the Ravens out. But it's looking bleak if those guys can't go, because while as good as John Jenkins was, and he was one of their best players, not named Nate Wiggins on the field on Monday. I mean, you can't rely on him and a rookie and practice squad guys against a team like the Chiefs. I mean, if you don't get pressure on Mahomes for as bad as they've looked, he will sit there and pick you apart, and they will get 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. So it's not a good spot to be in, especially this early in the season. But I guess the silver lining is, since it's this early in the season, you have more time to work with the trade deadline and try to find solutions if indeed you're working with worst case scenarios.
You mentioned some of those guys. You mentioned potentially just signing Wilkins off the street. I know there's some personality stuff that's floated around about him that's obviously sounds a little unconventional. Would he be that weird of a fit in a locker room that already has Marlon Humphrey? I don't know. But he's out there on the market. You could just go sign him, certainly. There are other guys. I mean, think about Dexter. I mean, look at a lot of these guys on the Giants, for one thing. People are putting it out there that apparently teams are already calling about Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't know if they want to move on from him already. He's been really great for them. Brian Burns, who they signed to a big contract during the kind of still the Gettleman years, when it was just like, hey, let's just throw money at a bunch of guys and draft Daniel Jones and do whatever the hell they were doing. Sexy Dexy Lawrence in the picture. And I guess what I'm driving at is, I feel like all those guys would be great to have, but it might be difficult to make it happen without a first-round pick, which the Ravens, and I know Eric DeCosta is a lot more aggressive than Ozzie Newsome when it comes to the trade market, but he still covers these first-round picks. I can't remember the last time the Ravens didn't pick in the first round. I think it might have been the Tebow year when they traded.
It was.
Yeah, Sergio Kindle, which worked out great, obviously. But they really love having these first-round picks. I think they look at it as their opportunity to get themselves an unquestioned starter without having to hurt their salary cap, which I totally get. And I also get if you want to wait a couple more weeks to see if it's really going to be a worthwhile proposition, to understand what's going on with Matabike, to understand what you have or do not have with this team, and whether it's worthwhile to pull the trigger. But is this the year that EDC finally says, you know what, screw it? Like, people were talking up this roster like it was a Super Bowl roster, which I tend to agree with. I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't do that all that often because I felt like the roster was finally there. It was hopefully going to mesh up with the experience, and they finally kind of get out of their own way in these big spots. Unfortunately, with that Bills game, we saw that might not even be the case at this point, but talented roster, a little unhealthy right now. Things look bleak, but man, like, especially if you can go and beat Kansas City by the skin of your teeth this weekend, I'd probably be willing to finally just say screw it and part with a first-round pick for the first time in ages and do what you need to do to fix this team. And I think your LJ Forts and your Josh Bynes and those kind of signings are great, but give me a Marcus Peters type impact right now. And that was a guy they didn't even have to part with a first-round pick for, but you know what I'm saying? Like, a guy who could bring that type of impact. And you talk about a guy who getting your hands on the football. I mean, that was his whole brand. I see, that clip that was going around of him recently of how he wants to be the guy that makes plays. He didn't want to be a shutdown corner because the ladies didn't like the shutdown corners who were consistent and just kind of nobody threw their way. He wanted to make the plays. He wanted to score touchdowns. Get me a guy that's going to impact the ball. Get me a guy that's going to impact the quarterback. Get me a Brian Burns, one of those guys. Or if it does have to be a less flashy but very stout presence along the defensive line, go and do that too. And if you got to part with a first-round pick, that's the cost of doing business. Because guess what? It is a Super Bowl or bust year because you're the Baltimore Ravens. And it's a Super Bowl or bust year for every single team in the NFL. But there are some owners who are willing to operate that way, and there are some who are just happy to turn a profit. And Steve Bisciotti, thankfully for us, is very much in that former camp. But sometimes you got to push your chips in. The Ravens have shown they're close to doing all the way that, but sometimes they like to hedge and hang on a little bit. And I get both mindsets, but me personally, I'd be willing to ship off that first round pick for the right player. What about you?
Oh, I'm all the way there. And again, it's like rosters like this don't come around often. It is a Super Bowl or bust year, all points that you said there. And I think that if I'm John Harbaugh, I'm in Eric DeCosta's office every day being like, please trade a first round pick. Cause that could potentially, if they do go on and they win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl, or that probably saves Harbaugh's job here. Where I think if anything like a wild card exit, divisional exit, AFC championship, I've seen be debated about whether he'd be safe or not. If there's another disappointing exit here, I think the writing's on the wall that John Harbaugh, this is it. You get it done with this roster. And if you lose in disappointing fashion again, they probably need a new voice in there. And so if I'm John Harbaugh, I'm saying, like, please go out there and trade these picks. Like, I need this for my job security. And plus, I mean, we see it's not just about like building a super team here at this point anymore. It's like that was the argument with like once they signed Jair, like, oh, they have a super team. At this point, it's just like get guys in that can play a position that you're decimated at. And that right now is defensive line. And we don't know about like Travis Jones or Washington. Like, doesn't seem like at this point, like, yeah, maybe they could miss a game or two, but at least from what I have seen Harbaugh say, it doesn't look like anything's crazy there. But for Matabike, like, you are losing a guy that was your best pass rusher. The pass rush, by the way, wasn't great with him even in there. I mean, they still were struggling to get pressure in those first 2 weeks. But then you lose a guy who, you know, at this point, you can even look at the outside linebackers, who I don't believe an outside linebacker's gotten a sack for the Ravens this year. I think Matabike has 2.
Yes.
And then who was the other one? Okay, Tavius Robinson does have one. So Tavius was the other one. But he still is a guy that, like, you're going to have to elevate into a bigger role if Matabike goes down. You have to elevate a guy.
He's more like your defensive end, right? If you look at like an OA, he's technically more of an outside linebacker and like doing more things, but you'd like him to find a way to impact the quarterback. And that's been a conversation with him for a long time, unfortunately. Tough start to a contract here for our guy OA.
Yeah, tough start to a lot of these contract years. I mean, Andrews got back on track last week or this past Monday, and he was looking for a big game. I mean, Jones in the stats department hasn't really, wowed. I know that, but again, he's like with Matabike out, he's getting double teams, and even with Matabike in, like, he was the one that was getting those, and then Matabike was able to kind of feast off of that. And so teams respect what Jones can do. Like, there's just a presence about him that's like, yeah, you have to know where 98 is on the field when you're lining up for that offensive line, because if you don't double team him, he can win. And that's the thing with this Ravens defensive line too. And just like the sack thing in general is like, they are not blitzing a ton. They're tied for 30th right now. Or no, they are 30th in blitz percentage, but they're tied for 30th in sacks and they're 30th in pressure rate. So I don't know if they just need to get a little more aggressive, because the problem that we saw for the Ravens for so many years, and then they kind of solved it for the past couple, and now it's kind of back to where it is right now, is they could not generate pressure with 4 for the life of them. Like, it was just, they had to blitz. They had to manufacture pressures. They just could not get outright wins for multiple seasons in like that early 2020s, 2020, 2021, 2022. And then they finally solved it. But the problem was they had to blitz those top tier quarterbacks. And we see it with Lamar. Like, usually Lamar, and after that Miami game in 2021, that Thursday night game, which was just abysmal. Miami just did cover 0 the whole night. Lamar is a very hard quarterback to blitz, but some of these other top tier guys, like, you can't blitz Mahomes and get away with it if you're not generating pressure on those blitzes. You can't do it with Allen or Burr or any of those guys. And the problem was, like, they would send Nate Wiggins on a corner blitz on Monday. Nate wouldn't get home, and then there'd be Jameson Williams just finding a soft spot, or Amon-Ra just finding a soft spot. If you don't get that pressure pretty immediately, like we saw, for example, Kyle Hamilton with those 3 first half sacks in that Colts game against Gardner Minshew, it's easy for quarterbacks to just kind of find a soft spot and a receiver to sit down and settle down in there, especially when you're playing softer coverages and, you're not really, like, if you're passing off a guy into his zone, that receiver can just sit down there. And that's been the Ravens' MO, right? It's, we're not going to let you beat us deep. We're going to always have a guy patrolling back there, but you can take that short and intermediate stuff. And that's that the Ravens, like, you rarely see like those 60, 70-yard touchdowns down the field, because they've been using Malachi that way. They've been using other guys that way. But at this point, it's kind of like, what philosophy do they have to start teaching these guys, or what plays do they have to start calling? Because I think we saw like Mike Green drop back into coverage on like a huge 3rd down play. And like, sure. What?
Ojabo as well.
Yeah. And I'm just like, man, and I remember when Wink was doing that with Justin Houston. And I'm just like, we have a 30, however old he was, 36-year-old dropping back into coverage. And those philosophies, they have not seemed to change. And at that point, it's just like you're getting too cute offensively. And I mean, I got James Prochet flashbacks from Todd Monken on that Derrick Henry throw. He's, I saw him.
Can we just drill it into their heads to just throw it away if it's not even remotely like wide open?
I know.
And I was thinking the exact same thing. The James Prochet just going into the vault, man, tough situation.
And I would also prefer if they just burned the entire rollout from the 5 and in. Just you're taking away half the field.
Every 2-point conversion. What are they going to do? Roll them out to the right. Who could have ever seen that coming? It goes all the way back to Roman. It's bizarre.
Yeah, you take away half the field, and actually on the what play? I can't remember what play it was, but Lamar rolled out to the right, and he had Derrick Henry. No, it was the fourth down play. It was the fourth down play from the one where Lamar
Henry
rolled
took
out to the right.
Lamar went to the left, right? Or
Yeah. So Henry went to the left and and he was calling for the ball, jumping in the end zone, and Lamar didn't see him because where's he looking? The side he's rolling out to. And so you're taking away half the field. Just they've needed to burn that part of the playbook for a while now. It has a very rare success rate. And like you see, like the exact play to Mark Andrews in the divisional round game, fourth down play, like even back in like 2021 when they were going for it a bunch to win games. Like I think the Steelers game, that was an incompletion to Mark and they lost that game on that play.
Felt like TJ Watt blew it up. Andrews actually kind of got open, but just really executed.
Yeah, they need to not just get cute. And look, I get that like they ran Henry from like the one, he didn't get in, and Ben Cleveland decided he just wanted to not block anyone on that third down play, and it is what it is. But you have, if you give me 2 chances from the 1 yard line with Derrick Henry, and you say you can run any play you want to, and you have Derrick Henry in your backfield, I'm running Derrick Henry twice. Like I feel like the success rate there, you might not get it, but I'd rather go out that way as opposed to like weird play action rollout, fun. And then the crazy part of that fourth down play was since Lamar held the ball and the ball was out, they got it at the 20 instead of the 1. And it didn't really matter because Dan Campbell had some of the worst clock management I've seen at the end of a first half there. And the Ravens ended up getting a touchdown anyway because they punted the ball back. But can't put yourself in those situations. Sometimes, you get there for a reason, or your philosophies are what they are for a reason. Sometimes you just don't stray away from them, and it might work for you. It might work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the last thing we can hit on here before I get you out of here, I know you got to roll in a little bit, but where are you at on the panic meter, and kind of what do you think? What's one thing that you want to see from the Ravens to try and pull out what has been the impossible for them in beating the Chiefs in KC? For me personally, I'm probably at like a 6 right now. I'm definitely concerned. It's not great to start out 1-2, but like I said before, I probably could have seen a world where it happened. I definitely didn't see it happening in the crushing, demoralizing fashion. In a loss to the Lions, I probably would have seen more of a shootout or just a closer game. But that game, despite it being 1 score, technically was not close at all in my eyes, especially in the second half when they kind of ran away from them. But like I said, 6 out of 10, I think they have opportunity to turn this thing around. Even a loss to the Chiefs, I don't think totally sinks things. The schedule is going to open up. There's time to make moves, but right now it doesn't feel great. It's on the wrong side of the 5 at the very least. So I'm definitely feeling it a little bit, but I feel like they could turn it around. And what I want to see them do against the Chiefs is kind of lean into that. Lean into how injured you are on defense. Lean into the fact that your offensive line has not been able to hold up that great in pass pro, nor really open up consistent holes in the running game. I want to see kind of a quick passing attack develop. And I know the Chiefs have guys like McDuffie that can really come downhill and limit that a little bit, but try to scheme guys open, try to play the chess game like Joe Montana used to, going all the way back to that West Coast offense, which is kind of similar principles to what Moncton runs anyway, and just lean into your identity, go for into the way you're built, I should say. Stop with the identity crisis, go for it on 4th down pretty much every time, go for 2 where you need to. And really that's the only instance that you can think of where they've beaten the Chiefs in the Mahomes era, where they were going for 4th down, they were going for 2, and they still only won by the skin of their teeth by our guy Owe punching that ball out at the end. But man, you just gotta lean all the way into your strengths and your weaknesses. And I think kind of a quick passing attack, try to open up the run game with Lamar Jackson's legs a little bit, and just balls to the wall. Like I said, I don't think you're totally trying to save your season here, but act like you are. Act like you've got to go and beat the big heavyweight, because the Chiefs still are that. I don't care what anybody says about their record. They'll be that until they're officially dethroned in the AFC. Maybe it'll be this year, but you're going to have to really try and prove that you belong amongst that class. And that starts with trying to get it done against them this Sunday.
And I agree. And one of the guys that I think could help you open up this offense a little bit is Keaton Mitchell. I mean, I get the whole special teams thing. Ali had a big return, and I know Jake Bates kind of saved that touchdown there for Detroit. But I just feel like the things that Keaton does for your own offense, like they need a spark guy like that. And I would rather just throw Keaton back there at returner and find some other guy to do Ali's job on special teams, because you need a spark like that. So, panic meter for me, I'll say it's at like a 5.5 right now. I mean, if they go 1-3, it jumps to like an 8. Like it's like very bad at that point because there is still time and it's still early in the season. But like,
is there like a way in which they lose though that would like kind of bring it down for you a tick? Like if they were to lose a close one by a toe, let's say, and they looked like they belonged on the same field as the Chiefs in the way that they did not versus the Lions. But like I said, man, very much looks like they belonged on that field with the Bills. They should have won that game running away. And I know like the issues that led to them losing were very much in keeping with a lot of things that make us concerned about them as a Super Bowl contender. But as far as like saving their season, like walk me through that a little bit, if I'm making any sense.
No, I get what you're saying. I don't know if I'm being honest. Like, I mean, obviously them belonging on the field with them or looking like they do and then losing would be better than just a straight up blowout. But I think there's really no winning for the Ravens in that situation because if they do, it'd just be like, oh, they couldn't come and do it in the big moment again. And they just lost the same way they always do. So I don't really know. Like 1-3 is a tough place to play back from. And again, like you're right, the schedule does open up. They play easier teams, but we know the Ravens will
early bye for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
So that could help them.
Honestly. They need that. It feels like we always kind of are like, oh man, this bye's too early. This bye's too late. The bye last year could not have come at a more perfect time considering kind of where they were.
They've had a lot of late ones recently.
Yeah, and I was one of the first people to be like, man, this bye's way too late. This is ridiculous. And then it, kind of came in week 14 or whenever it was, week 13, and I was like, hey, this is actually pretty good time here. So with the way the injury situation has been going, week 7 bye is not bad. But I mean, if you can get to the bye 4-2, I'd feel really good. I'd feel really good if I were the Ravens. 3-3, it's kind of like meh. You can kind of work back from that, but then you're kind of like the 2-4 would be obviously disaster, and anything other than that is just awful. But to me, being able to at least show physicality, because the Lions, they straight up just went in there and beat the Ravens, right? Like you said it. The Ravens did not belong on the field with the Lions that night, despite the fact that, they were technically in it, and then Henry fumbled, and they had a couple of other things that could have gone.
Yeah, second half, it just started to unravel. Like, I think I probably phrased that incorrectly. They were definitely, it was a close game.
No, yeah.
Throughout most of it, but the Lions definitely imposed their will. And it just felt a lot worse than it was. And those losses when you see them and when you feel them. Think about Philly last year. You think about that Dolphin game in 2021. Haven't had a lot of them. So when they happen, they stand out.
Yeah, it's usually once a year. I think, last year was the Eagles. I guess the Browns was one also where, well, that was two. Was that two? I can't even remember. Yeah, it was 2 years ago with Watson when Watson went like
that one was fluky too. I thought
I know it was so weird. Watson with the broken shoulder or whatever in the second half, his craziness. But yeah, there's always like one of those games where it's just like, nope, that team came in, out physicaled them.
Is that the last Deshaun Watson action that we've seen?
No, because he tore his Achilles in week 1 or 2 last year.
Was that last year? Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was probably the best game Watson has played in a Browns uniform. So that
the only good one potentially.
Yeah, literally. So I just, it's tough because you drop to 1-3, and you know what, you're playing 3 Super Bowl contender, or you lose to essentially in that scenario 3 Super Bowl contenders. But the Rams are no easy game. The Texans, I think if you don't beat the Texans, I think you might want to just chalk it up this year, because that Texans team, while they have talent, that offensive line, if you can't get pressure on CJ Stroud and that Texans team, you know you're in a tough spot. So 3-3 to me might be the most realistic, because maybe it's just like inevitable. Maybe they drop one of the Chiefs and the Rams games, and then you win the other one, and then the Texans game. But you still have to play those AFC North games, which admittedly look a lot easier than they did at the start of the year. So that to me is just kind of like where I'm not panicked about them winning the division or anything. It'd have to be pretty catastrophic, because I mean, who have the Steelers played so far, and what has their defense looked like? And then obviously the Bengals with Joe Burrow being out, and the Browns, the defense is great, but the offense doesn't really have a lot. So like, I feel confident in that. Like, I'm not necessarily concerned there, but obviously you're not playing for a division title again. You're not playing for, double-digit win season in the regular season. It's, can you build enough good habits in the playoffs? And I guess the one silver lining there is like, doesn't matter what you do in the regular season at that point. Playoffs are a whole different beast and a whole new season. We've been on the good side of that and the bad side of that here with this Ravens team. 2012, they were horrendous to end that season, the regular season, and they went on the run of a lifetime. 2023, they were a beast, couldn't be touched. 2019 couldn't be touched, and then they obviously have the ends to there. So playoffs are a whole different beast, but you got to stay healthy and you got to build good habits.
And that's what we've been saying all off season. Regular season doesn't matter, right? It's all about the playoffs. And I think part of that was couched in maybe taking the regular season for granted a little bit as a Ravens fan, who they've kind of steamrolled their way through them more often than not in recent years. But yeah, you could almost flip that to your advantage, where if you do go on and find a way to win this division at an 11-6 or even a 10-7, maybe, you do say, hey, we're starting to get a little healthier. Maybe we've made some acquisitions and some trades that have worked out for us. Whole new ball game. And, you host a wild card game and then you got to go on the road 3 straight games. And who knows, man, maybe I'm just grasping at straws, but there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. So
sports are the ultimate, hey, what the heck just happened? And, if the Ravens have kind of a middling regular season, and I think both times they won the Super Bowl, they were the 4 seed, if I'm not mistaken.
It would be the most fitting, poetic way for this group to finally get it done. All the amazing regular seasons and just playoff disappointments that they've had, they just sneak in one year and just surprise everybody. That would be great, but obviously getting ahead of ourselves a bit.
It'd be great. I mean, and that kind of the Ravens have always kind of been that team, regardless of how good and how dominant of seasons they've had recently. They're that team that just kind of loves to play the underdog, it feels like, and come in there and not be. I talked about this with the Orioles all the time. It's like the Orioles are the ultimate team that you put any expectations on that team, no, not happening. They start to lose all those games. Hey, we're going to rip off a 6-game win streak and kind of get back into it a little bit. And then everyone is, I believe again. And then, all the way back down, nothing happens. So maybe that's the Ravens too, that nobody believed in them in that 2012 year. That 2000 defense was historic, but everyone's like, that offense, you can't win with Trent Dilfer. Or like, maybe it just has to be a situation where, like, man, this Ravens roster really is underachieving right now. I'm like, the run defense, this and the pet, and then maybe they go on a run and they prove everybody wrong. So maybe that's just the formula in Baltimore sports. I don't know.
Yep. Conversations that we seem to have year in and year out, but they never get old, because guess what? You never know what's actually going to happen. And just because something has happened 7-8 times at this point, maybe it could be different this time. But you said it all, buddy. I know you got to get out of here in a couple of minutes. How about you go ahead and plug your stuff, where people can find you, what you got going on before we close up shop?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. You can find me over at the Locked On Ravens podcast. So we're 5 days a week plus more over there. You can find the show in video form on YouTube or in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. We have a lot of other stuff we're doing as well. I'm doing the live watch alongs this season during the game, so you can see the soul leave my body in that Buffalo game in week 1.
The Oestreicher cast.
Yeah, I love it. You see, someone has to compete with the Mannings out here. I mean, what can I
think Kevin Cast probably rolls off the tongue a little bit better.
Yeah, Kevin Cast. KC, Kansas City. You see, it all works out. So yeah, it's been really fun to do them. Obviously, I've hoped for a couple of better results than we've gotten so far this season, but you can watch along. Maybe who was it on the call this? Is it Romo? I think it's Romo on the call this week.
Jim. I feel like every time the Ravens and Chiefs play, it's always Nance and Romo. God bless.
You're gonna get some Josh Allen commentary, I'm sure, from Romo in there somehow, some way. So
I think this is an interception, Jim. Tony,
arm punts galore. The whole 9 yards. So if you don't like who's on the call, or you just want the Ravens reaction and perspective, you can tune into that. We do that live on the YouTube channel. Then we have instant reactions. Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We have that as well. It's myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kaiser Ismail. So a lot of content on Locked On Ravens. I also do some writing over at the Ravens Wire, and you can find me over on the Ryan Ripken Show talking about that baseball team in Baltimore, which
big weekend for one.
I know. I couldn't make it up there, but it was a blast. So congrats to him and Jamie. And I know it was. I just know knowing him, it was a crazy time up there. So I don't know if I would have survived.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everyone for hanging with us here in the live chat on this slightly early evening recording of the Jumbo Set podcast. We appreciate you all. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to us here on YouTube, like the video, comment on it, get that algorithm pumping for us. You can also find us across social media at X52 Podcast, X, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. You can find me at Jake Louque. That is Louque. You can find the rest of the guys. Spenny at Ravens 4 Dummies. That is the number 4 as he gallivants across Europe right now. We'll see if we can get him in for the preview or the review show for the Chiefs game. Brian at Barstool Banks, Taylor at Taylor Smith 10, Eric at EDI TTI 22. We appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.
Play really, really hard and execute your system, and that's what it's all about. Yes,
There
sir.
it is.
Trust.
He's pretty big trust.
Big trust, baby.
Hey, yes, sir. Right on cue. Hey, right on cue. Hey, let me.